Welcome to the No Sweat podcast. This is Samuel, and as always, we're joined by three of the finest blokes gone around. We won't be start benching or cutting any of these boys, hopefully. But to begin, Jimbo, how are you travelling this week?
Good, mate. Got my first Sunday beer for the podcast. Tucking into a nice Carlton.
Loving it. How about you, Luca?
Yes, very well. Hopefully I get a start at least. Gee whiz, I can't believe none of us are starting.
I think JD's the one that's going to get cut, so over to you, JD. How are you travelling?
That's one. You've got off to an early start there, Dot. I'll pay that. That's one. No, boys, I'm doing fantastic. Let me tell you why, because I am carb loaded at the moment. What am I carb loaded from? Well, Jim, you're going to be excited to hear this potato recipe, boys. And I've come prepared this week. I've got my own sting. You ready for this? Here we go.
Boy, I'm cooking so good.
Good question, Gennaro. This week we have potatoes. Now, I'm going to keep this brief. You get a cold pot of water. You get potatoes. Charisma potatoes tend to work well. Cut them in quarters. Chuck them in cold water. Bring the water to boil. As soon as it starts boiling, let them sit there for about 5 minutes. Take them out. Get an oven dish, slightly deep. Get a massive chunk of butter, like the biggest chunk of butter you can find. Chuck that in there. Bit of olive oil. Stops the butter from going bitter. Drain the potatoes. Put the tray in the oven without the potatoes. Get the butter sizzling hot. Chuck the potatoes in. They'll all like sizzle and crackle in the butter and all that sort of stuff.
Bit of
Put
a
it in for
shallow
15 minutes. Shallow fry. In the oven though. You do it for 15 minutes. You take them back out. You put some thyme, you put some salt. You then baste them more in the butter. You chuck them back in another 15 minutes. You take them back out. You rebaste them again. And then do it a third time. And afterwards you'll have the crispiest, most delicious potatoes. Thank me later. Off the chicken wings, boys. I'm done.
Beautiful.
Well, speaking of spuds, the NRL started back again this week. But shout out the NRL. Did anyone actually see any of the highlights or anything this week?
Not much. No.
Well, yeah,
Not
I just
interested, thank
YouTubed
you.
it a bit before and got about 3 minutes in. But the no crowd noise, sorry, they had the fake crowd noise actually, and it was quite good. I'm actually keen to hear it in the AFL.
It'd be ridiculous. I was trying to look up the scores just by Googling, because I'm not going to download an NRL app, obviously. So I tried to Google the scores. Nowhere to be found. You have to go into a match centre, into a newspaper publication, into another match centre to try and find the scores. It's just not worth it.
That's way too much trouble to see that. But footy's 11 days away, lads, and the fixture was released round 2 to round 5. Who do you boys think has the biggest advantage out of this early fixture?
I think Geelong obviously have a clear head start. They finally get their wish to have all their games at Skilled, or whatever they call that thing now. But Sydney a sneaky little advantage, and Brisbane too. I don't know what you guys think, but Brisbane don't leave the Gabba for their first 4 games, so that might be a little advantage.
Yeah, talking through the week with a few of you boys, we were talking about what kind of advantage Brisbane Gold Coast would have. And I thought it was just much of a muchness, because they're going to have their first few home games at the start and it won't make too much of a difference. But then Luca pointed out that if it's a shorter season, so 16 games left, if you get a few home games, one in the pocket, can help you out in the long run. So I think Brisbane, Gold Coast are going to be some of the big winners, considering they're going to be playing a lot of their games at their own ground.
And Brisbane as well, they're going to be playing West Coast, Freo, Adelaide and Port Adelaide in Brisbane. So does that mean they don't have to travel to Adelaide or Perth at all to play them there?
Yeah, assume so. It's going to be a big blockbuster.
That's a huge advantage, yeah.
West Coast versus Richmond, Thursday night, Gold Coast. Yeah. Tune your TVs to that one.
So with the Gold Coast games, they're all played at home. Is that correct?
Yeah, at Skilled, isn't it? Yeah. At Metricon, sorry.
At Metricon, okay. Yeah. So in the nicest, stuff it. With full disrespect, I suppose, to Gold Coast. Anyone playing Gold Coast then really has an advantage having to play the away game against a weaker club and then getting a return game against another club. It's not, I don't want to use the buy word, but it's not a bad deal for anyone who's got them early on in the season to be able to bank those early points away as well.
That's a fair call, but I think the biggest unknown this year is obviously like we don't know what the rest of the games are going to be and where they're going to be played.
Yeah.
Comes back to the old adage that you just bank all the points you can get. So this year, 17 games. If you can get some easy wins or you can get some advantage, take whatever you can get. So we'll see if Brisbane can capitalise on that, or maybe Gold Coast. Unlikely, but we'll see.
One thing I noticed in the 2 NRL games that I actually YouTubed, I think both home teams lost. So I was thinking that the away team, they're used to they're travelling and not having that home support. So it's going to be interesting to see if that carries over in the AFL. James?
Yeah, as well on the the Bundesliga. We were talking about that a few weeks ago. I think they were saying that somewhere around, I think it was 6 out of 22 teams were home teams. So home teams won 6 out of the 22, or some random lopsided number like that. So it shows obviously just how important crowds are to a home ground advantage.
I suppose the one counter that may be that from a soccer point of view, the ground's sizing is basically identical across the board, whereas in the AFL we do. It's one of the, I love it. It's a great quirk actually. Is the ground actually varies depending on where they're playing. You've got some grounds that are narrower or longer and so on. So there may not be that same discrepancy. I think the home advantage is still there to an extent, but yeah, definitely right. The crowds will play a part for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you got to think as well, there's been talks over the last couple of days that there might be some time where there's a transition to crowds actually coming back to AFL. So you've got a few, I think I was listening to the Rub yesterday with Damo was saying that in a couple of weeks they're going to start formulating how they're going to actually see the return of crowds to football. So obviously it's not going to be 100,000 at the G, probably more, your 500-600 mark, I think they were saying. What do you reckon, Luke?
Yeah, there's definitely a plan that I read, I think it was in the Herald Sun last week, that they want to, or have a plan in place for the grand final to have up to about 30,000 people there. I think they're going to ramp up to that in the meantime, starting with a few thousand, slowly increasing, spread out in a certain amount of seats, and the whole stadium will be cleaned and whatever after games. Interesting. Don't know how a 30,000 seat full MCG sits with me.
Especially if the grand final is going to be played at night, as they're maybe suggesting. That's going to be a serious change, a 30,000 grand final in attendance at night. What do you boys think about a twilight or a night, Granny?
This year where everything's up in the air, it's probably not a bad year to trial it. There's probably going to be not much of a choice that the AFL is going to have, considering that the Cox Plate's running throughout the day, and they've generally had that day for themselves. So I think Martin Pakula, which is the Minister for Sport, was coming out and saying that it's probably most likely it's going to be played at night.
Do any of you guys have strong feelings about this? Because I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference.
I think from a spectacle point of view, I think it's better played at night. I hate watching day games in the sense of just the sun and the shadows and things like that are across the ground. Just annoys me. But I think just having that night game, like we froth Friday night football, we froth Saturday night football. We call those the prime times, the games that everyone wants to play. Why should then the biggest game of the season be played just the middle of a Saturday afternoon? I know you said last week I'm a traditionalist, Luke, but I would be more than happy to see grand final go to a Saturday night.
I think a twilight would be really enjoyable.
Maybe a twilight would be. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, I reckon as well.
They have the Caulfield Cup or something already on during the day. Is that why they have to play it later, they were saying?
I think it's a Cox Plate, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, I reckon twilight's fantastic. You start in the so JD, you said what time do we reckon? Most likely twilight would be probably 4:40. That's probably the traditional twilight time slot. So if you start at 4:40, you've still got a bit of daylight up until about in September, up until about 6:37. So it starts ending in the dusk. I think that's probably spectacle wise looks the best.
I agree with that. I think lights coming down on the players, sun setting around the ground, you see the light change throughout the game. I think it'd be good to watch.
And adding to the grand final, just say, for example, we did have a night grand final and it was a game that was as good as last year's grand final. Sorry, not last year's grand final, 2018 between Collingwood West Coast. Just say it was that good. I reckon it would come back again in night grand final because everyone would have a great game or a great contest correlating to that time slot. And as well, if there was a rivalry in the grand final, just say, for example, the Richmond Collingwood grand final this year, it might be the catalyst that it needs in order to get the grand final at night. But either way, I don't really care what time it is, just as long as it is on that day and it's no interruptions. And next year we can have 100,000 at the G. What do you reckon, JD?
Well, so we just on that topic, I suppose. So with everything, all the money that the AFL's had to cough up this year and has lost, what would be their ideal rivalry? What would be the big money maker, the big draw card as far as rivalry of the dream grand final that they could get away with?
Realistic or just
a bit of fantasy in there? Why not?
Well, probably the most realistic would be
That's two.
Would be that's number 2, Dotty. Probably most realistic would be Richmond Collingwood, and that's obviously huge.
Yeah.
Any of the big 4 Victorian clubs would be massive for Victoria. What do you reckon, Dodd?
Yeah, I think Collingwood and Richmond, especially that Richmond's had some success over the last few years. Their supporter base is as rowdy as it's been in history, and we know what Collingwood brings to the table as well. But I think West Coast as well, that'd be an interesting dynamic in a granny as well. But it's just, I think it's wide open this year, boys. I really don't know who's going to be top 4 or even make the granny.
Imagine all the Carlton supporters that would come out of the woodwork if they magically got to a grand final. That Melbourne would collapse again.
It would be
North would
great on
struggle
a
to
side
play in
note
front
to
of a
have all
crowd of-
4 of those big clubs doing well, but it doesn't seem likely that all 4 will
When's
peak
the
at
last
one point.
time? When's the last time that all 4 have been around the mark at the same time?
80s?
You probably have to go back to the 1890s. Well, what about? So we've heard a bit about the rivalries now between the top 4 or the big 4. How do we think about one of the big 4's rivalries that's renowned, obviously, at Arden Street? The big rivalry between, or the not so big rivalry between North and Essendon. JD, you're a North man. What do you reckon?
I'm going to put you down for 1 already, just because I know that was a subtle swipe.
Is that a thing?
It kind of is, because you think back to some of the great games that North and Essendon have actually played over the years. There's been some rippers. I think 2015 it was one of the finals, the first one. I forget which one. There was a fantastic game. North had the comeback win. But then even going further back than that, I think North, I'll reluctantly say this, coughed up one of the biggest leads of all time to an Essendon comeback. So there has actually been a bit of rivalry. And I think also the geographic location of where they occupy within Melbourne has sort of got a little bit of that. And I just hate Essendon. So I'm okay with that rivalry. It's perfectly fine for me.
It's good to hear that all those down at North Melbourne still haven't forgotten about that 69-point turnaround.
Can we just do a quick straw poll and go around the room? Who do you feel is your club's biggest rival or rivals? I'll start with you, James. What do you reckon?
Well, obviously, Essendon support. I'm not going to say North because we've had we've got bigger fish to fry than that, or bigger potatoes to fry. I'll probably say the Anzac Day game has really elevated the Essendon Collingwood rivalry. Thinking about back to a podcast I was listening to throughout the week with that's for Essendon fans. It's with like James Hurd, Joe Watson, all that sort of stuff. They're talking about that the club actually has a few rivalries. There's a few. So they actually mentioned Essendon West Coast, Essendon Carlton, Collingwood, and Richmond. And they did speak a little bit about the North Melbourne one. So I don't think it's completely lost on Essendon people per se. But for Essendon, I think their biggest rival at the moment would be Collingwood.
What builds a rivalry? Because and the only reason I say that is I look at the Essendon ones, they're structured around big games, which I think is a bit of a gimme for building a rivalry. So like you said, you got Anzac Day. You got, I suppose, the Geelong and Hawthorn one being Easter Sunday, but their rivalry, I like their rivalry because it's built on the games themselves being ridiculously tough right through that 80s period. I know I digressed here slightly, Luke, as far as North's concerned, but I don't know. I hate Melbourne a lot. To be honest, we had the bunny on Melbourne for it's like 16 straight games, and I just hate them as well. So I don't know if it's a rivalry as such, but yeah, I'll go with them. Them and Essendon, there are always 2 that I want to win throughout the season. So yeah.
I think the Hawthorn-Geelong rivalry, I might be a bit biased here, but I think it's been the best in recent times because, as JD mentioned, just the success of both clubs. And after Hawthorn, I shouldn't say we, beat them in the 2008 grand final, we know the famous speech afterwards that they were never going to lose to Hawthorn again. And it was 11 games in a row carrying on to the 2013 prelim where Geelong would come back from 30 points down at three-quarter time and Tom Hawkins would kick the winning goal after the siren. And just all those games, I think I was at all of them and we lost all of them. And it was just a crazy rivalry and the games were just so intense. It felt like it was a grand final, even at a round 7 game. And just both teams have maintained that consistency and high level of play. So I think that might be the best rivalry at the moment. But Jimmy?
Yeah, well, going back to what JD was saying, what makes a rivalry? In regards to the AFL, you're probably going to say that making a rivalry would be, the geographical location of the teams. So, for example, because it's a national competition, there's a few states that have 2 clubs. So you've got obviously West Coast Freo, Adelaide and Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Gold Coast to a lesser extent, and Sydney GWS to a lesser extent. So obviously geographical, there's something there, obviously, that would make a rivalry. And then I think number 2, a bit of history from our games that they played together. So just say as Dodd brought up, Hawks v Geelong, that's obviously a rivalry now because of the quality of the level of games that were being played. I can't really think of a third, but those two obviously are the big ones.
The one thing that I think I have an issue with, though, is the slightly constructed rivalries that they tried to create. I know North got picked up with, which I'm okay with, for the Easter Friday rivalry. The first year, I think, was with the Doggies, and they tried to create something. And then after that, they changed the club. And so it was like they were looking to create a rivalry that worked. But I think the Doggies will work, but I don't have that same passion towards it because it feels manufactured. It doesn't feel like something that's been built over years and years. I know that takes time. But it just feels a little bit forced, this one. But I know, Luke, prior to us coming on air, you had a good point about the rivalry aspect.
I think the opposite of that, John, is that when two teams are really peaking at the same time, then they can create a strong rivalry. Things like, think of Hawks and Essendon, really got fierce for a while when they were both playing quite well. More recent times, like you mentioned before, Dodd, Hawks and Geelong, was both teams peaking at the same time, creating that rivalry. And another one that I look back really fondly on was for a couple of years of that West Coast versus Sydney period where both teams were so good. Every time they played, there was so much hype, so much excitement that their fans and their supporters really got into it.
Yeah, I think that's a forgotten rivalry, that West Coast Sydney one over those grand final years. But great point, Luke. Speaking of Sydney, Buddy Franklin in a bit of strife. Looks like he's redone the calf, hasn't he? What do we think, boys? Do you reckon he's going to return? Oh, hammy, was it? Sorry about that. Do you think he's going to return again in 2020? And was the deal, that 9-year deal, worth it? James, what do you think?
Look, if he's going to come back, yes, he probably will play football this year. He probably won't get to 1,000 goals this year, which he's quite close to. And I'm fearful if he doesn't get back and doesn't hit that 1,000 mark, I'm fearful that we probably won't ever see that again. I can't really, obviously being quite young in age, I can't really remember anyone getting to 1,000. So it would be sad if no one ever gets to that career goals wise. In terms of if his move was a success to Sydney, on TFNY, we posted a poll up on Instagram asking if it was a success. I was actually a little bit surprised with the responses. So we had 35% saying yes, it was a success, and 65% saying no, it wasn't. It sort of made me think, what defines success for such a marquee player to go make that trade? Yeah. I'm not sure if you guys have any ideas of what you thought it would have looked like a success for him.
I think the original thing, though, like there was all those rumours when he was about to move that he was going to GWS originally, and then that last sort of sneaky Sydney thing. So his success then based on promoting the game in the area, which I think was why we're sort of hitting that GWS section. So has he done that with Sydney? Don't know. Not in that area, not in New South Wales, to sort of see that effect that he has.
I think my question to this is, what are you measuring success from whose perspective? From the club's perspective? From Buddy's perspective, I'm sure it was a success. He's got to leave Melbourne. He's been in a quieter area. He's with Jacinta Campbell. He's had a great time. From the club's perspective, well, I don't know.
I think it comes down to three aspects. AFL making money off it. That's success from their point of view and growing the game. Buddy's personal success, you mentioned Jacinta and the quieter game and all that sort of stuff. That's fantastic.
Big tick.
And big tick. And then the club success is premierships and finals. Have they won one with Buddy?
Nope.
No. Is it really a success? They've been okay. They've been
Two
great.
grand final losses. It's a bit stiff.
That's not a win.
I think it's a bit of recency bias as well. Like the start of the deal was a great success. The game in Sydney was going nuts. He was kicking those 70-meter goals with Hutto, losing it. And I think the deal was a success, even if these last few years he's kind of become a bit more injury prone. James?
Thinking of the way that the media puts it for Sydney, the way they've framed it is that it's such a marketplace where you need to have those marquee players in order for fans to come in and actually watch the game and invest in the game. So from a marketing perspective, the biggest name in the league going to that club obviously would have been huge for that club and for that marketplace. So you got obviously Lockett that's gone there. They've got a name. Sydney's got a reputation of having a big marquee forward coming through. And I think a lot of people were saying that Sydney when they were on their downturn as of like the last couple of years, if Buddy wasn't there, it would have been a lot harder for Sydney to maintain a lot of people in the crowd and attendance and all sort of stuff.
Oh, we hope he comes back healthy because an up and about buddy is just great for the game, isn't it? And I hope he comes back soon enough. But boys, we discussed a few changes last week for 2020, and there's a few more changes that have come out this week. There's a bit of controversy, I should say, about the extra interchange on teams' benches. We also have the club spending cash on cardboard cutouts. Boys, over to you. What else do you think clubs can do? And are we a fan of the extra interchanges? James?
Just quickly, what do we all think about the cardboard cutouts? Do we think it's a waste? What are we thinking?
It gets some people some jobs, I guess, but it's a very interesting one, isn't it?
Oh, look, it's probably good for the printing market, but can't we just put some people, like just small amounts of people? Like, sure, like, you know what I mean? Let's have like a lottery type system where, you know, you get 20 people in the crowd or whatever. Or maybe you put 20 people in amongst the cardboard cutouts as well. I don't know. There's a couple of options there.
Well, recently, the drive-ins are going to be opened up, and I saw a funny comment on Twitter. I can't remember who posted it. They didn't have a tick, so I don't remember their name. They posted it out, and they were talking about the drivers. So you got Coburg, Dramana, and I think there's one in Dandenong. Imagine those opened up, and you could watch, instead of watching 4/7, you can watch AFL Saturday night, and you can get cuddly in the car and just get the commentary through the radio. I reckon that'd be fantastic. That's a good way for clubs to be able to connect with their fans.
That's a great.
Tell you what, stick a hot pie drive-through before that, or a sausage roll drive-through before that, and I'm having a happy time.
Oh yeah.
Do you think we need to embrace this within the community? Do you set up the local parks with a big projector screen and just sort of, you know, have your circles spray painted on the ground so you got your 1.5?
Local footy clubs, maybe? You reckon they could screen it somewhere in the local clubhouse or something like that? Obviously respecting the laws, they might be able to make $1 or $2 out of it. Might be a good option to combine both things.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Obviously they can't play, so yeah, to make some money off the actual watching of the game might be good. Another thing that's come through for the rule changes is that we're saying that 16-minute quarters are here to stay for the year. However, for next year, it's probably not something they're going to be looking at. That's a huge success for footy fans around the country. I think a lot of people were saying that, they do not want less footy. Just don't change it, all that sort of stuff.
This one really caught me by surprise because almost every player that I've heard talking about it, apart from I think Lachie Neale this week and maybe a few others, almost every player and coach that I've heard talk about these reduced quarters has loved the idea of shortened games. We spoke about it a little bit last week. Footy World seems to like it, but supporters don't. And the AFL have taken the side of the supporters this side, I suppose.
I think I know why, and I'm actually happy with it on this occasion. You got longer quarters, you got more ad breaks. You got more ad breaks, you got more advertising. And it simply comes down to a money aspect with the AFL, but I'm happy for that to be the case on this account because common sense will reign.
Well, not when you talk about Fox Sports, though, because they don't have ad breaks during the quarters.
Siren to siren.
Sorry. Yeah, look, fair point. But still, the broadcast rights are still through Channel 7, though? They're still breaking money in from that, aren't they?
Yeah, from Channel 7 they are. But I think to make up for that, this year they've extended the break between quarters, so there might be some more ads between the periods there.
And they've also extended the break between goals as well. So I think it's gone up to 40 seconds or something ridiculous. So Channel 7 can throw a few ads in there.
Was it 35 or 45 previously? I thought it was 45.
I wouldn't have a clue.
Okay.
Well, I know that they are increasing it.
Wasn't one of the arguments as well for shorter quarters was because they want to encourage more people to come to the games and have a good experience. And I think the Sunday night game as well, they wanted kids to get home earlier and stuff. But if they are increasing ad breaks and goal breaks and quarter time, halftime breaks, doesn't that really defeat the purpose of shortening the game, James?
Yeah. Well, for the kids, look, they don't care if they get home at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock. They're just going to jump on TikTok and scroll through and just look at all these people until midnight anyway. Just obviously the social responsibility that the AFL is putting out for the kids. But no, look, longer quarters, longer games, or not longer, sorry, it's normal. Normal, yeah. But keeping it the norm, it's such a win for footy fans. And I think a lot of the fans obviously were very vocal about it. I was listening to a bit of talkback radio throughout the week. Shout out SEM Breakfast. And a lot of people were getting into Gary Lyon because he wanted to shorten it. to me, just it doesn't sit right wanting to trim the game by 20%. Just leave it as it is.
I think it's nice to have a bit of normality in 2020, but the extra interchange, boys, what do you think about that? Because they're talking about maybe having 6 on the bench as well and unlimited interchanges during a game.
Is that just for this year they're saying that?
Yeah, I think that this year for now, definitely. But
so we're playing shorter games. We've had longer breaks, and they want to put more people on the pitch. Is it?
I think they said for the time being that there's not going to be any changes to the interchange bench. So it's an option that they have moving forward. But at the time of recording, so that what's this, 31st of May, footy's about 11 days away. They're not going to be having that extra interchange, but it's something they're keeping up their sleeve in case something does happen in Australia where they have to have more games in less time.
Probably the only other added benefit that I can see from it is because we don't have a second tier, we don't have the VFL playing, it does give those players an opportunity to actually get on the park. So I suppose probably from the club perspective, you're getting an opportunity to look at those players who wouldn't be getting a game otherwise. So while I don't like it from the game day that I'm watching, it's probably okay from the point of view of at least I get to see those periphery type players.
Yeah, I heard on SEN one of the assistant coaches talking about that a lot of the players, they've got 44 players on a list and a lot of them are not going to be playing regular football week to week. So to have an extra few on the bench is probably a good thing for them and for the club.
Yep.
So, boys, I think we're going to take over to our Making the Leap segment. We had a bit of success with that last week, a bit of controversy with Nick Larkey mentioned in another podcast. Now, this week it's going to be myself and Luca that's going to be making the leap. How about, Luke, you want to start us off with your player?
Alrighty. I really struggled with this. I had a lot of players in consideration and I super struggled to pick one. I almost went with Jack Martin, then I realised he almost played 100 games and he's getting paid about $2 million this year, so that ruled that one out. So instead I've gone almost the complete other way. I've chosen someone who's only 20 years old and has only played 15 games in his first 2 years of AFL footy. Despite that, I think he screams excitement. I think he's due for a big 2020. So the guy I've chosen plays for the Adelaide Football Club. Number 12 pick in 2007. Goes by the name of Darcy Fogarty.
Oh,
2007? Geez, a bit old.
2017.
I was going to say,
I did say he's just
waited a while.
I thought you were going to say Dan Natalia.
Darcy Fogarty. Like I mentioned, he's only played 14 games in 2 years, which isn't great. He has kicked 19 goals in those games, but because of the turnaround to this year and a few of the team changes, I think he's going to make a big step up this year.
I really like this from you, Luke. This is good. Keep it up. Fogarty's a gun.
I think he's a great player
as well.
So he's only 193 centimetres, but he's 95 kilos. A lot of people would say for a tall forward, he's a bit too small. But looking around, it's the same size as Jack Rivalries, same size as Tex Walker. Stephen May, James Frawley, some other guys we think of big beasts. They're all that size. So he's competitive. He can take a good grab. Lovely kick of the football. And he's very versatile. Can play a utility, medium size, can switch back if you need him to. He can roll into a midfield role in small bursts, play as a big midfielder. Plus, he's got the nice number 32 on the back, made famous by Rashudo there. So I like it. 2 years ago, he played 10 games in his first season of footy. Struggled last year to get into the side. Played in defence in a sample. Eventually played the last 4 games of the year. Averaged 5.5 marks a game. Kicked 5 goals in a game against West Coast. Looked really, really good. Picked up his first Brownlow vote. So this year, the reason I think he's going to make a big step up, simple answer is opportunity. 2 years ago, Adelaide lost Mitch McGovern to Carlton. This year, Josh Jenkins has gone to Geelong. So it only leaves Tex Walker and Tom Lynch as the major 2 tall forwards at the club. So to me, I think it's a good chance for him, especially considering it sounds like Matty Nicks wants to play Walker up on the wing a little bit more. There might be some room for Fogarty in that forward line to really stake his presence and make a leap. I don't think he will be an absolute superstar just yet, but would not at all be surprised to see him kick 25 goals this year. Really prove himself to be the great young talent Adelaide think he is.
Are you a subscriber to the notion that he is a player that loves the big stage? So I remember hearing earlier in the year that when he was sent back to the Sandful, he didn't perform. A lot of people were saying that he prefers to play on the big stage. Are you a subscriber to that?
I'm not sure. A lot of the word coming out of Adelaide is that he's a bit of a larrikin, so he's a bit of a jokester. And we look at those type of people. I know it's a big generalisation, but those type of players around the league do turn up on the bigger days and they tend to sort of switch off a bit on the meaningless days. Maybe it's something to do with it. I don't know. But, I mean, he started at full forward in round 1 this year. So it looks like he'll be getting that chance to play, and hopefully he can stake his name.
What were his stats round 1?
I think he only had 8 touches. He did kick a goal. I can't remember the exact number. I think it was 8 touches, a couple of marks and a goal in there.
Yeah, I think he's primed. I think he's primed to take the step up. You speak about opportunity. That's definitely something that's obviously going to work in his favour. Nick's playing Walker more up towards the wing. I think that might have been a preseason troll, but you can probably see the relevance and the importance of moving Tex around. So, yeah, I really like that, Luke.
I don't think Tex will play on the wing permanently, but I think it will be a bit of a Westhoff situation where he kind of rolls onto that wing a bit, leaving more room in the forward line for some of those players, almost a Dusty Martin from a couple of years ago where they made space for him in the forward line. So I think there's a bit of chance there for that to happen. Look out for him.
I like it. Darcy Fogarty. Remember the name, gentlemen. I've gone with a similar type player. I've gone with Will Hayward from the Sydney Swans. And similar to Fogarty, he had a great first 2 years. So 2017, 2018, he kicked 50 goals, and he was the 11th fastest player in the AFL era to kick to 50 goals. So it's pretty impressive. But last year he had quite a difficult year. He broke his jaw in round 3 with Cade Simpson, which ruled him out for a few weeks. And then he had a niggling hip injury, which ruled him out for 6 of the last 12 games. So he only managed to play 12 games last year for just 12 goals. But he's looking to bounce back this year. And like Lucas said as well, I think with Buddy Franklin missing definitely a few weeks, it's just going to increase the opportunity for Hayward to kick a bag every week. And he's looking as well, he's that versatile player to play on a wing, go forward. Him and Heaney as well, I think they're going to be 2 targets up forward to look out for this year. And he's just got that class and that excitement factor as well that not many players have. He's got great raps up there in Sydney, and I just think after an injury-riddled season last year, he's really going to bounce back this year. So look out for Will Hayward as well.
Yeah, I actually saw this kid prior to the draft at the All-Stars game there at Pun Road. Very, very good mover. He's got that, you don't say X Factor, but you could see he was a cut above a lot of the other kids on the park at that time. From what I understand, he's also John Longmire's one of his personal favourites as well. So knowing that he's going to get plenty of game time in a position that really plays to his strengths, so that's a great nomination.
It's always a good quality to be liked by the coach, James.
Yeah, I remember hearing throughout the week that I think it was Horse or somebody else was saying that Heaney's going to play more of a up the field role in forward line. Oh, was it Papley? Was it?
Papley spoke about Heaney. Yep.
Oh, Papley spoke about because with without Buddy there, Heaney will be playing forward. Is that something you can see Hayward going? And I was looking at his stats as well. He was averaging around 11 touches last year. What do you think he can be averaging this year?
I think around that 10 to 15 disposal mark is probably about his limit this year, but it's those goals per game. He can kick 2 or 3 quite easily playing forward and up the wing, and he kicked 2 in round 1. So, yeah, it's one to look out for sure. And just Sydney's such an interesting list at the moment, especially with Buddy out. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think we've done pretty well there, boys. All 4 of us had some good names, so we're going to have to wait. James?
We're going to have to see at No Sweat Podcast which 2 were better. So we have me and JD last week, obviously the clubhouse leaders, if you're asking me, and we have Luca and Dodd this week.
Just put all 4 out there and someone pick who you think.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, at No Sweat Podcast, let us know who was your favourite. Who do you think? Yeah, who do you think is going to make the next step? Who do you agree with us? And if you want to provide one of your own, go for it.
I think we all know the answer to that. But anyways, let's move on, boys. All right.
Yeah, moving on, lads.
Follow-up question. Out of those 4, who will be the next Brownlow medalist? Not Larky because he's a forward.
If you're going just off Brownlows, you're probably not going to say Larky or Fogarty. Well, let's break it up. Out of Hayward and Gresham, who's going to win a Brownlow first? And out of Fogarty and Larky, who's going to win a Coleman first?
I don't think either of them are going to do either of those things. But I think Gresham's the most likely Brownlow type just because of the position he plays. And probably Larky will have more of a forward opportunity to kick goals. So he's probably going to be the most likely Coleman.
Speaking of Brownlow boys, I know we're going to do more of a season's predictions podcast next week, but who have you got at the moment your favourite for the Brownlow for 2020? Luke?
All right, I have to take over here. Anyone who's been within 100 metres of me in the last 10 years knows my thoughts on this topic. Anyone who's played Supercoach with me knows my thoughts on this topic. It's the new Kevin 07. Cripps 2020. It's bound to happen. It has to happen. He's the man. Paddy Cripps. Get around it.
It's such a Carlton thing for Cripps to win a Brownlow in 2020 where it's such an asterisk heavy season. My vote would probably be Dusty. No, joking. I think that Cripps as well, he really can elevate that next level, especially if Carlton win a few games this year.
I think that's the key. He came third last year with only, what did we win, 4 or 6 games at the Blues last year? So more wins should mean more exposure. Hopefully that means Cripps Brownlow.
I'm going James Warple. I think he's really going to... No, he's going to be up there soon, boys. Give it a few years. He's going to be winning a couple of Brownlows, I reckon. But I'm going 5 back-to-back. I think he's just hitting his stride even more so. And I think this year he's going to prove even more. There's still a little bit of chat about Dusty and Cripps and a few of these lads. But I think 5's clearly the best player in the game. And the umpires love him as well. So I'm hoping he goes back-to-back.
Sneaky Lockie Neal chance as well. Especially we mentioned Brisbane's advantage playing more games at the Gabba earlier on in the podcast. Lockie Neal's not out of it either.
Ben Cunnington. For one very, very, very clear reason. We're playing shortened quarters. That means a bloke doesn't have to run for an extra 4 minutes a quarter. He's not the fastest bloke, doesn't have the greatest tank. You get him in the gut, so he's going to do some huge damage. So, Cunners for 2020.
Is he more noticeable now with the hair as well on his lip?
Yeah, not a fan. I think he's going to grow it, and then I'm going to shave it off him.
Just looks like everyone else now.
That's right.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how those predictions go, boys. But let's go forward to the start, bench and cut segment. And this week we're just going to stick purely with footy. So no pasta or coffee segments this week. But let's start with you, Jim. We've got 3 great forwards for you this week. So who are you going to start, bench or cut? We've got Nick Riewoldt, Matthew Pavlich, or Jonathan Brown.
Oh.
That's a real good one. But to me, it's simple. Just because I don't really buy into. Obviously, he's quite. What would you say? Courageous, but I wouldn't want to buy into bravado being the factor for putting him in. So I'm going to bench Jono Brown, and I'm going to start Nick Riewoldt just because he's incredible, and I'm going to I'm going to cut Brown. I think I was saying. I'll start again. I'm going to start Riewoldt. I'm going to sort it out. Yeah, I went from the back end. I should just
really frazzled you here. It's a tough
one. Front to the middle. Let's go.
I'll start it from the top. I think that's a saying for a reason. So all right, we're going to start with Nick Riewoldt. We're going to bench Pavlich just because he's a gun and he's actually super underrated considering the schnoz, considering how far he would have to travel every game. We spoke about that in one of the first podcasts. And I'm going to cut Brown.
Oof. Yeah, nicely handled, James. I really threw you a tough one there.
Yeah, nicely handled. It's terribly handled.
No, that was very well handled.
Yeah, I think they're all well-respected players as well, aren't they? No one really seems to dislike any of them. But well done, James. Johnny now.
Yes.
Got a few tricky ones for you. So let's go in the midfield. We've got Simon Black.
Yes.
Scott Pendlebury. Mm-hmm. And Adam Goods.
Simon Black, Scott Pendlebury, and Goods. Oh. You said midfield, yes?
That's correct, yeah.
Back pocket.
Based on midfield, I'm starting Simon Black, I'm benching Pendles, and I am cutting Adam Goods.
That is a great answer. I was hoping for that answer. Well done, John.
And that is no disrespect to Goods. I think he's a fantastic player.
Disclaimer.
However, I just feel, yes, that's it before you cop the rough of the PC brigade. I just feel that he's a far more versatile player, but not across the midfield. As a pure midfielder in his distribution, Simon Black is.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Luca, this is a tough one as well. Corey Enright, Andrew McLeod, or Luke Hodge?
Oh, okay. Just in general?
Yeah, in general.
Okay, well, McLeod's starting. This is slightly...
Well, think about it as a back pocket, kind of off the half-back flank.
I think McLeod's big strength is that he could do both, is that he could play on the flank and he could roll into the mids, and he's just so classy. I love watching him, so regardless, he's my start. Between Boris and Hodgie's a bit tougher. I know that a few players this week were really pumping up Enright's career and saying how good he was being, but I think I'm going to have to cut him and have Hodge on the bench.
Yeah, good call. It's a tough one. Boris is one of the most underrated players ever, I reckon, as well. He was just could take the small and it was just classy with the ball as well. But well handled, boys. I think that was quite a tough week this week, and hopefully next week might be a bit easier. But let's head into Footy IQ now with Luca. What have you got here?
All right, welcome back to Australia's favourite trivia segment, Footy IQ. For those who haven't heard this before, we go around in a circle. Everyone names the results to a question. Either you get it wrong and you're out and you'll hear it, or you get it right and we keep moving until the board is finished. Dodzy, your start bench cut worked out perfectly with this week's segment because you did bring in a few well-seasoned players. And our topic for this week is current AFL players with the most games played. Now, the fact check brigade has come onto my list here and improved it because I stuffed up a little bit. But here we go. Everyone on this list has played more than 250 games. 16 names on the board. We're going Dodd, James, JD. Dodd, you are up first.
Well, it's fresh in my mind. I'm going to go with Buddy Franklin.
300 games on the dot, number 6. Congratulations, James.
I'm going to go for one, Sean Burgoyne.
Number 1 on the list, 377 games played.
For one, Scott Pendlebury.
Pendlebury is also on the list, 302 games played, puts him in at number 5. Dodd.
I'm going to go Joel Selwood.
Joel Selwood is correct. Number 6, 296 games. James? Sorry, number 7.
Oh. While we're on that vein, let's go Gary Ablett.
Gary Ablett is number 2 on the list, 346 games played. John?
Heath Shaw.
Yeah,
Heath
nice.
Shaw is correct. Number 4 on the list, 309 games.
I'm struggling already, yeah. Cade Simpson. He surely played a few games.
Cade Simpson is number 3 on the list, 326 games. James?
I've got my answer ready, so I'm not buying time. But after my last one, Gary Ablett's going to play his 350th this year. That's pretty incredible, yeah. All right, let's go David Mundy.
Mundy is on the list.
Eddie Betts.
Eddie Betts is on the list. 316 games played. Dodsy.
Betts.
Oof. Harry Taylor. He's been around a while, surely.
Yeah.
On the list, 262 games. James.
Dodd, you're a jerk because you stole mine. Let's go Shannon Hearn.
He's correct. 270 games played.
Someone mentioned him earlier, Justin Westhoff.
Justin Westhoff is correct. 269 games played.
The Hoff, what a legend.
That's a journeyman there.
That's a good call, JD.
He's a solid man, the Hoff. I enjoy the Hoff.
All right, I think Jack Rewalt's getting up there as well. He's got to be close.
Jack Rewalt is correct. 263 games played, one more than Harry Taylor. James.
I don't think he is correct, but he's the only one I can think of at the moment. Let's go Trent Cotchin.
Trent Cotchin, just out. 235 games played, so he's a little bit under.
I'm going to go the other bald wonder, Nathan Jones.
Yeah, good call.
This is an interesting one.
There was a big deal made about him recently, just for being like one of the biggest losers, like from a games played perspective. As far as
he's not that big of a loser. No,
he's probably a ripping bloke, but the most unfortunate.
It does look like you a bit HD.
286 games, John. He's on the board.
That's me going for another week.
Sorry,
JD
James.
might go back to back here. Did JD win last week? I can't remember.
No, it was a controversial outing.
I think we had a draw last week again.
No, that's right. I'm in strife, boys. Mark Murphy.
He's correct. 269 games, the same as Justin Westhoff. Good call, Dodds. back to you, John, to stay in it.
Josh Kennedy.
Which one?
Whichever one's played more games.
Come on, Johnny. Tell us which one.
That's a good call. Double the chance.
Yeah, that's it. I've gone with the. I'll go with the Sydney Josh Kennedy.
John, I respect the attempt, and I respect you going for two names in one.
Was it the other one?
The Sydney Josh Kennedy, 247 games.
Oh,
The West Coast Josh Kennedy.
Oh, don't say it. That means I can say it next.
244 games.
Oh,
They both just missed out. Doddsy,
man.
you are our champion.
Hang on, doesn't he have to get one right?
No, he's already guessed once more than you, John.
This game's rigged against me.
But give us
Well
one
done,
more.
well done,
I'll
well done,
take
well
that.
done.
Give us one more.
Can I just say who I was going to say next anyway?
Please.
To see if you made
Go
it.
ahead.
How many's Danger played these days?
Danger's on 249.
248.
He's one game off.
Oh, wow.
A
Who's
few
in
names
That was
left
just a-
on the board.
that was a full random guess from me. I was one off.
It's
Not
impressive.
bad.
There were a few names left. 266 games, Bryce Gibbs.
Yeah, loser.
Forgot about that guy.
265 games, Travis Boak.
No, yeah.
Tom Hawkins, 257. Shane Edwards, 256.
That's another journeyman.
There might be a few other names in there, but that's my list there. I think you've got everyone other than that. So you guys did pretty well this week. Congrats,
Yeah.
Doddsy. You're our only two-timer so far and our only winner so far. Oh, no. Did John win one,
Cheapest.
didn't he?
Nah.
Did John win
No,
one?
he
No.
drew.
Nah.
Doddsy, you're our only winner. You won 2 of our 6 games or whatever we played. Now, this segment's getting way out of hand.
The old Dodd hot fingers on the Google's just proven
Get
to
on
be
it,
a winner
boys.
every week.
Smashing
So
away
much
at that
clicking on
keyboard.
the keyboard. Boys,
All
been
right,
an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, lads.
That's us for the week. As Dodd mentioned earlier, we are coming back next week with a bumper predictions podcast for the season coming up. So tune in for that one. We'll have all of our thoughts on the season to come and what we think will happen.
I'll be firing shooter McGavins at everyone. Boom, boom.
I look
Do I have to
forward to it.
prepare?
As always, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at No Sweat Podcast. And we'll see you next week.
See you,
See you,
boys.
boys.
Try my
Enjoy
potatoes.
Enjoy a froth.